Got a life problem? Danny Bonaducci is here to help. No problem is too big or too small. Call Danny the Life Coach at 1-800-252-1025.
Danny Bonaducci, Life Coach. Danny Bonaducci, Life Coach. He was a
All right, it's time for Danny Bonaducci, Life Coach. Life Coach is brought to you by Goldberg Jones, Divorce for Men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. And by the way, the Jones of Goldberg Jones in studio right now. Hi, Rick Jones.
Hi, Danny.
That was almost a sentence. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
Question for Rick Jones from Goldberg Jones. Because the beginning of that question on my computer screen said, my wife won't sign. And I've wondered about that because everybody I've ever divorced was happy about it. But I hear stuff all the time. My ex-husband, my ex-wife, nobody's going to sign. Is that legal? Can you go to court, fight the good fight, and then the ex-wife or husband goes, I'm not signing that?
Well, they can certainly say that they're not signing it, but if you get all the way through the process, meaning all the way through the pending court date, the actual trial, and the person either doesn't show or actually represents themselves through trial, and then ultimately says, I'm unwilling to sign the papers, that's okay. The court will sign it.
Cool. And just on a footnote of that, that's almost always a mistake, isn't it, to represent yourself?
Absolutely.
No, I mean that real. I know you're a divorce lawyer and everything, but they say, what is it? Yeah. If you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client and a jackass for a lawyer. So yeah, go get, if that's happening, serious biz. I'm not a divorce lawyer. Go get yourself decent somebody to represent you.
800-252-1025 if you want to talk to Danny Bonaducci, Life Coach, and Rick Jones from Goldberg Jones. He, of course, is from Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE. Tony in Seattle, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Tony. You got a question for Rick Jones?
Yes, I do. It's a long story. I'll break it down, cut the fat from it. So I was on a deployment back in 2009,
right.
And my wife was cheating on me, took my money, and to top it all off, she was on meth. And we have 2 daughters together.
You can pick them, Tony.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, so we when I came home, I found all this stuff, and we talked about getting a divorce. And long story short, we were going to get a lawyer together because we both agreed on it. And I had to go back to deployment to finish out my time in Iraq. Well, when I was there, I got served with a protective order from her saying that I beat her up when I was at home.
By the way, I wasn't there, but can I tell you, that happens all the time. It drives me crazy. Yeah. Somebody saying somebody beat somebody. You should have to prove that. You shouldn't just be able to say that. Okay, go on, man.
So I get served with that. I had to spend, I don't know, a good $9,000 clearing my name because if I get a domestic violence charges, I get kicked out of the military because I'm not allowed to carry a weapon.
Yep.
So I get that thrown out of court. Well, she then again files another one for me. Oh, I'm sorry. During this process, I get back from deployment. My kids are gone. My house is empty. And she moves to Seattle. I lived in Washington. So she moved to Washington. I lived in Utah. And she moves to Washington. I now don't know where my kids are. I don't know basically where anything is.
Hey, Tony, my head's going to explode because I hate this woman so much. What's your exact question for Rick Jones of Goldberg Jones?
Yeah, I apologize. Let me fast
No, that's
forward.
cool. I'm getting beside. I'm going to start screaming. And I want you to get a good question to Rick Jones.
Right. So my question is now 5 years later, I've moved to Washington to follow my kids where they're at, be here. She gets remarried to some guy she meets on the internet and moves to Alaska. And I fight that as well because I've changed my whole life to move up here with her. She goes to Alaska, and while she's there, she goes back to rehab for the second time. This guy's got my kids, and while in rehab, she tells him she wants a divorce. So this dude in Alaska, who's not even the father of my kids, has the kids. She's in rehab, and the court say I'm trying to fight it.
Does this story come with trading cards? Because I can't. All right, so it's a horrible story. A cheating liar bitch that's on meth has your kids, and you don't want that to happen. What did you get out of that?
Wow, Tony.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, so obviously you did end up getting divorced from this person.
Oh, yeah. We've been divorced for 4 years now or so.
And you have a custody order that talks about custody of your children. What does that say regarding your rights to them?
Well, so right now, if I live in state with them, there's talk about them coming back when she gets out of rehab, is right now, if I live in the same state, I get every other weekend with the kids and a Wednesday dinner. But as of right now, I just get summer vacations and then one weekend a month if I can afford to fly up there and go see them.
Tony, what state was that order in?
Washington.
Okay, so you've got a Washington parenting plan that talks about this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What wasn't perceived when that parenting plan was created and signed by the court is her going to rehab. So you now have a substantial change of circumstance, which are buzzwords to the court.
Right.
And it also is resulting in existing harm to the children because the new husband doesn't have any custodial rights to your kids.
Right.
So what that tells me is the door may very well be open to you to go back to court and seek a modification of this parenting plan, especially while she's in rehab, of getting some sort of an emergency change. There's obviously more to the story, which is why we had to bring you to the question.
There's a ton of that story.
But pick up the phone and give us a call, because I want to flesh that out with you, but it sounds like there might be a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel for you finally.
Okay, that's cool. That's a phone call you should make. 1-800-DIVORCE, buddy. Call and ask for Rick Jones. And thank you for serving your country. I appreciate it.
And good luck to you, Tony. Bill in Snohomish, you're the next caller for Danny Bonaducci Life Coach with Rick Jones from 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, great. Thank you, Rick. I'll be real quick on this. Married for 34 years, going through the divorce. It's not final yet. We got one house with mixed equity into it. And my real question is she's currently dating a guy who's disabled. I'm paying spousal maintenance of $2,600 a month. And what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to protect my state retirement during or after the divorce. Is there anything I can do to do that?
By the way, great job, Bill. I really do appreciate that. You got something for him there, Rick Jones?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of a mix and match. Think about this, which is you've created this community pie that over the time you've been married of assets and accumulation. As you'd mentioned, there's a house with equity. The equity, of course, is the piece. But your retirement is also a piece. Now,
It is. I couldn't believe that.
It is. And
I learned that the very hard way.
It may be split a little bit, which is you may have earned some of it prior to marriage, and you may be earning some of it now post-separation, but the bulk of it, given the length of marriage, is community property. So ultimately, those numbers all go into the hopper. Now, if your goal is to try and protect that in its entirety, then what you're going to need, your task is to find other assets to be able to move to her side of the equation. Here's a real simple example. Let's say you guys agree to a 50-50 split,
right,
and the house equity is exactly equal to the community portion of your retirement. Well, what you can do is to say, here, you get the house equity, I'll take my retirement, and as long as she's on board with it, you can do that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being concise, Bill. I do appreciate that. I had no idea I had a pension plan, and I'm getting divorced from my ex-wife, who looks at me in a lawyer's office and says this: you should be glad I didn't go after your pension. And I went home and checked, and I had a pension. She knew well before I did. That's all money out there.
All right, we've got time for one more caller. It's Danny Bonaducci, Life Coach, with Rick Jones from Goldberg Jones. This is Brad in Gold Bar.
Hey, Brad.
Hey, how you doing? You guys rock. Here's my question. My divorce is final, but I'm still, she was supposed to refi the house to get my name off the mortgage, and I'm still liable for it.
I get this call a lot.
Yep.
So what's your question?
So how does that affect my future borrowing power since my name is still on her mortgage, and what are my options to get her off and get that cleared up?
Sure.
Thanks, man.
Well, the first question's easy. It's not good to your credit and your ability to get credit for a couple of reasons. Number one, it shows up as an obligation when somebody's looking at your worthiness. But secondarily, it also means that if for some reason there's a scar on what she's doing, if she's a late pay, a slow pay, doesn't pay at all, then it's continuing to harm your credit. So do you want to do something about it? Yes, which is why you call. Now, what you can do about it really depends upon what's said in your divorce decree. A lot of times there will be a particular period of time, like it'll say she has 2 years to either sell or refinance. Does it say anything like that?
Unfortunately, we did one of these do-it-yourself up here, and it does not.
Okay, but it does say that she's required to refinance?
It does. I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, there may still be some love that the court can show you on this, because if you bring that back, you do what's called a motion to enforce.
A motion
to enforce. So you're in front of the court, and you're basically saying, hey, court, it says she's required to refinance, and she hasn't done it. Now, what the court will probably do is they'll look at it and say, well, these papers don't help me because it doesn't say within 2 years.
Right.
But at the same time, they can look at it and say, at the same time, perhaps we should apply a level of reasonability. So that's where you may get the court to say, let's put a time limit on this, or let's talk about what sort of efforts she's done, kind of marching her down the road of ultimately getting some satisfaction out of this.
Thanks, and good luck, man. And I'll tell you what, next time you come back, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about those do-it-yourselves, because here's my take on it, and then we'll save it for next time you're here. everybody starts off friends when you're going to do it. Oh, we're all pal. We're just going to split it down the middle. And then everybody's crazy. So I'm going to ask you about the getting a quickie divorce that doesn't cost much, and it turns out somebody gets mad when you get back.
I'll be ready.
Thank you. That's Rick Jones from Goldberg Jones. That's all the time we have for Danny Bonaduce, life coach.